Kia ora, my name's Matt and I'm building a Sopwith Camel. And this week's particularly exciting because I have my very first wing rib. Keep watching and I'll talk a little bit more about how I got to this stage. See you shortly. My original clamshell rib jig. And the flaw with this is, if I grab a cap strip, the cap strip sits against that face there and the web ribs sit between it, and you've got to put a screw between the cap strip and the web rib, through the cap strip into the web rib, and obviously there's no scope for doing that with this particular design of rib jig. So I'm having to redo it, which isn't a bad thing. That was actually quite an early effort. I've kept it as much for sentimental reasons as anything else. So now I'm building a new one. So I've cut off an inch piece of that and that, so I can then mount these in here, and these will be screwed permanently to the plywood. I'll make sure I've got the spacings right between those two, and once I've done that, then I'll put a round dowel in here or something similar, since I don't actually have any round dowel, but I'll put something similar in there which I can then use to wedge the cap strips up against the web ribs, and between those dowel points I should be able to put screws, which should cover most of the screw points, if not all of them. So I'm going to see how that goes, and I'll probably show you the finished result shortly. I've got the blocks secured for the spars, where the spars are going. Currently I'm working on adding cap strips here and here, which will then help key the various web ribs into place. When screwing these in, I also added a piece of paper as a shim. So I wanted a tight fit, but not a friction tight fit. Blocks screwed in. Next step is the lugs on the outside. Just been using the router table. This is my nosing piece. So that was laid flat on the router table to do first that side, and then spun around to do the other side. And you'll notice this part here is a little bit munted. Probably see better from that angle. That's from not holding it flat against that surface there. Thought it was, but clearly wasn't. But it's okay from my thumbnail forward, and that's the bit I'm mostly interested in. I managed to catch it in time, so that's okay. Turn into a proper nosing would require rounding this over as well. But not going to worry about doing that because this isn't going to be a proper nosing, it's just basically a practice piece. I've also routed out the grooves in the capping strip. They're using this bit here, it's a 4mm bit. My web is 4mm, but equally I need room for glue as well. So what I've done is I've run it through one way and then run it through another way to get just over a 4mm gap in here and even spacing on either side. And that seems to work, and that's 1/32 of an inch deep. The other thing I found is I've broken into my capping strip pack, and based on the ones I've taken off the top, it appears that most of my capping strips have actually shrunk a little bit, which is a little bit annoying, but that's okay. It's what I had to expect with doing those capping strips so early before the timber had fully dried out. I don't think I've got that problem anymore, but I'll use these in the meantime, largely because I've got them and I want to basically do a trial run. This one here won't cut the mustard for the real thing. The grain isn't quite right. But practice, here we go. It's another really hot day, but I'm out in the garage working on my ribs. Just putting together the very first one. It's using reject materials throughout, but this can be practice too. Figure out how to make this process work. So where I've kind of gone to, I started off putting cams on both sides, then came to the conclusion with cams on both sides I've got no point of reference to make sure the rib's actually straight and where I want it to be. So I replaced the cams on the top with blocks, which should key the rib in to be in the right position, and cams on the bottom. Well, I've managed to make the first rib, which I've got here. Step back a little bit, see if I can get into the frame. Very first one. It's made out of scrap, reject parts, so it's not a usable piece, which is just as well because there's a few flaws in it. You can see I've got orange on the back for the parts I can't use. There's flaws all the way through those. I've glued the top cap strip all the way along, and I've screwed the bottom cap strip. In use, these were sent out to the front line with the top glued and the bottom not glued, just screwed in place, and they were glued on site, glued and screwed on site. What I've found through this process is getting the screws to line up correctly with the webs is not as straightforward as I initially assumed, and see a little bit there. You can see I've got that about 2 or 3 places along here where the screws and the holes have popped through, which isn't a major on this piece, but it's something to keep an eye out for and something to sleep on a little bit as well. I've got an option of course gluing both top and bottom, but the catch with that, if I grab a piece of spar, that might be easier. The catch with that is when this is mounted to the spar, there's a small piece of cap strip placed on the inside edge of both of these to keep the rib aligned and straight up and down. If you glue the cap strips on both sides, you can't then slide this on the spar with those on. Now, making these wings themselves, I could arguably slide these on, attach those afterwards. But I'm about to do destructive testing, and this chunk of timber here is going to be part of that framework. So once I glue those pieces on, there's no way I'm going to get the next spar on without destroying this spar and leaving glue residue and needing a lot of tidy up. So I'm erring on the side of going with gluing top, screwing bottom, and then gluing the bottom once it's actually in place on the wing, or the test rig as the case may be. So that's where I'm erring to at the moment, but overall pretty happy with that. If I don't destroy it, I'll put it on a frame and send it to my father to go on his wall. I think he'd appreciate that. Now where I've gone with the actually assembling, this top edge here is erodited in place. Ultimately I'll use a proper aircraft adhesive, but this erudite, I don't have that yet, and this erudite will do the job, and this will do for testing as well because it's rated for up to 150 kgs, which is almost twice what my wing rib is rated for. So this should do the job for testing, and that'll test the materials and the workmanship, both of which I've got question marks over, even though I'm the one doing the work. But this will help give a bit of confidence as to whether I'm heading in the right direction or not. According to the plans, the top is also screwed, but I'm seeing little mileage in that, and I probably won't do that myself. The glues these days are a lot better than the casing glues. Casing glue is, I believe, made out of cowhide or something, and it's pretty primitive compared to what we can do today. So where I'm going is I'm going to glue the top strip, no screws. I'll screw the bottom strip. At least this is what I'm thinking at the moment. I'll screw the bottom strip, and then when it comes to fitting them on the spars, I can fit them over the spars and at the same time glue these bottom strips in place. So where to from here? I need to make a brand new nose piece. This one, as it turns out, is a little bit too narrow. It's good enough to be able to sort this out, but when I checked it, this is actually rattles in here, way too much. And when I checked it, it wasn't the nose, it wasn't the web rib that was wrong. It was the nose piece. The nose piece is too loose. So I need to sort that out, make another one of those. On the other end, there is a piece of tubing, aluminium tubing, that goes between the web ribs to form the trailing edge. I need to find something to substitute for that, just to help out the stability of the wing rib. Then I'll make up a few more of these. I've got at least another 3 sets of marked timber. So these two are both not aircraft grade, so I'll use those two, a couple out of this stack, and I've got a few here as well. And of course I've got loads of trailing edge ones which are no good. So I'm going to make at least 3 more out of non-aircraft timber, and then I'll make a couple out of aircraft timber. I may even test these ones first before I start making them out of aircraft timber, just to make sure I've got process as right as I can get it before I waste any more good plywood. But quite exciting, and I'm really pleased to get to this point. This is nearing the point where you've actually got something aircrafty to look at. Unfortunately, the downside of this is I've got about 40 of these to make up, and these are not quick to make up. So my YouTube content may be starting to get a bit thin on the ground for a while I catch up with these things. But hey, I'll see how we go. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll catch up with you next week. Cheers.